I only found my long-lost billionaire parents after an unexpected blood donation. Billionaire dad. Finally, I have a daughter to squander this huge empire. Billionaire mom. My limited edition bags have someone to inherit them now. Overbearing CEO elder brother. Spend the money however you want, little sister. Second brother, a scientist. The latest face masks, use as many as you like, my sister. Then came my frivolous playboy third brother. Damn it. I have to find my sister the best man in the world. I licked my lips and pulled my son out. We're here to spend money as a team. I have the rarest type of panda blood, Rh negative. I first found out about it during a blood test when I was pregnant. The doctor took my hand and explained the risks of giving birth with this blood type. But I've always been carefree and didn't take her words to heart at all. Fortunately, heaven blessed me, and my baby was born safely. 2 days ago, I accidentally saw a video appealing for panda blood donors. I looked at my waist, which had grown noticeably thicker. I immediately called the number on the screen. Losing weight and helping others, truly killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The day after the donation, a luxurious Rolls-Royce stopped outside my door. A group of people stepped out, leaving me utterly stunned. Among them was a beautiful middle-aged woman who grabbed my hands, tears glistening in her eyes. Sweetheart, I'm your birth mother you lost all those years ago. The words shocked me to the core, and I nearly pulled away to run. A handsome middle-aged man stepped forward, his eyes red. Sweetheart, I'm your dad. I would have called the police if I didn't have such a strong mental state. What if they were scammers? But the 3 handsome men behind them looked almost identical to me. It would have been unbelievable if they weren't my real brothers. My mom held me and cried for a while, before slowly explaining everything. It turned out I was the youngest and most beloved daughter in the family. Back then, my parents' business was at its peak, which sparked jealousy and blocked many people's financial paths. So they joined forces to kidnap one of the children. After watching for some time, they targeted me. They originally wanted ransom, but something went wrong halfway. I insisted on getting out to use the toilet, and that was how I got lost. My mom looked at me with swollen, teary eyes and asked, "Sweetheart, do you remember any of this?" I shook my head. I had no memory at all. The director of the orphanage told me I had been wandering for half a year when she found me. I was pale and malnourished, having collapsed outside the orphanage gate. The director took me in. After a checkup, they found I was not only malnourished but also had a severe cold. That serious illness lasted nearly half a month and almost killed me. I forgot everything from before when I woke up. However, when I turned 18, the director handed me a small notebook. It had my childhood doodles and some crooked handwriting. She said it might help me find my birth parents someday. The bombshell news that my real parents were the richest family in the city left me dizzy. "Are you really my mum and dad?" My mum and dad exchanged glances, both on the verge of tears. "You have a deep red butterfly-shaped birthmark on your lower back, don't you?" I nodded. My mum immediately pulled me into her arms. "You're my daughter. You have the birthmark, and our whole family has panda blood." Wow, the truth finally came out. My dad looked at my tiny 1-bedroom apartment and sighed. "My baby has suffered. We're moving to the family villa today. Live wherever you want." My mum held my hand affectionately. "Mum bought lots of limited edition bags, they're all for you." I licked my lips and dragged my son out of bed, where he had been sleeping soundly. "Mind if we add 1 more person?" 5 shocked faces. "Are you married?" Talk about asking the wrong question at the wrong time. "No, I'm a single mum." My eldest brother rolled up his sleeves, ready to fight. Which bastard dared to leave my sister? It was a long story. I shook my head. "Don't mention that scum." My third brother, dressed like a peacock, took my son and promised firmly, "Damn it. I'll find my sister the best man in the whole world." I added quietly, "He has to be handsome." "Of course." My calm second brother patted my shoulder. "Little sister, I'll protect you from now on." Tears welled up in my eyes instantly. Being loved and protected by so many people felt amazing. My silly son finally woke up. "Mum, who are they?" "Dear grandson, I'm your grandma." "Let me hold my big grandson, I'm your granddad." "Young man, call me uncle." The tiny room was filled with warmth and life. An hour later, I had only seen such a huge mansion on TV. Actually being here felt unreal. But my son had already become fast friends with my 3 brothers. He rode on the eldest brother's shoulders, let the second brother lift him high, and had the third brother take him swimming. My mum pointed to 2 rows of new autumn Chanel pieces in the living room. I bought all your sizes. If anything doesn't fit, I'll have their designer alter them for you. I would have thought I was dreaming if I hadn't pinched myself hard. I hugged her soft waist and buried my head in her shoulder, taking a deep breath. Mum, happiness came too fast. I'm scared you'll disappear tomorrow. She kissed the top of my head gently, her voice soft. Silly girl. Mum will stay with you every day from now on. I'll never let you leave again. What happened back then left deep psychological scars on all of us. A year after the director took me in, a couple came to the orphanage wanting to adopt a girl. They took a liking to me at first sight. The director only handed me over after careful checks. After my step-parents took me away from the city, they showed their true colors. They were infertile and lazy. They adopted me only to get government benefits. I wouldn't have been able to go to school if the director hadn't called every 6 months to check on me. Later, the couple brought home a baby boy and told me he was my brother. As a kid, I had to cook for them and take care of the baby. That was why I became independent early. I could cook many dishes and look after children. But I kept all that to myself, afraid of hurting my parents. I only told them I'd been okay all these years. My son wasn't used to the nanny's care, and still slept with me every night. I stroked his little head and asked, Baby, are you happy now? My son kissed my cheek and said seriously, As long as I'm with Mum, I'm happy. Such a good boy. Though it would be even better if I had a daddy. Me. My sweet boy's sudden change left me speechless. Truly, you can't trust a man's words, no matter how young he is. But speaking of his daddy, I guiltily looked away from my son's innocent eyes. His daddy wasn't actually a scum. He was my former boss. I used to be a CEO assistant. My direct supervisor was a senior from my postgraduate supervisor. He was also my secret crush for many years, Xu Zhuo. I always knew Xu Zhuo was a genius. I applied to his company partly for personal reasons. But I never imagined I would end up having a son with him. Why did I like him? There was no special reason. He was handsome and incredibly smart. We worked on research projects under the same supervisor, and it was only natural I fell for him over time. But even though I liked him, I knew we were too different to be together. So I never crossed the line with him all those years. As for this child, it was truly an accident. Back when I was Xu Zhuo's assistant, I went out with him for a banquet. I mistook a strong fruit wine for pure juice, and got drunk. When I woke up, I was in a hotel bed, naked next to Xu Zhuo. I was terrified. I didn't think twice and ran away after getting dressed. I hid at home for a day, trying desperately to remember what happened. Unfortunately, the alcohol was too strong. I had a complete blackout. In the end, I blamed it on us both being drunk, or simply bad alcohol. But it had happened, and I already had feelings for him. For a long time, I couldn't face him at all. I took 2 days of sick leave. Xu Zhuo didn't contact me once. I stayed at home and thought carefully for 2 days, finally deciding to resign and cut off all contact. In my eyes, his silence over those 2 days was answer enough. I made up my mind and went to the company to hand in my resignation. I was nervous about seeing him, but it turned out Xu Zhuo hadn't been to work for 2 days either. The HR lady who processed my resignation said something had happened to his family. The board of directors had been running the company in his absence. Just like that, after one night together, I never saw Xu Zhuo again. I left his company, deleted all his contact details, and moved to the other side of the city. I didn't look for a job right away. I used the money I'd saved over the years for small investments. I just wanted to slow down, adjust my mood, and start over. But 2 months later, I found out I was pregnant. When I first learned about the baby, shock was all I felt. But once I calmed down, I couldn't bring myself to abort him. I grew up in an orphanage and never truly felt what a family was. This child was the first person who truly belonged to me. In the end, I decided to give birth to him. Although there were many twists and turns for me, and many years had passed, but the truth might have been too much for my son. So I decided to keep it from him. I made up an excuse to distract my son and lay in bed thinking about changing jobs. I hadn't worked for a long time to take care of him. Fortunately, I learned a lot working as Xu Zhuo's assistant. The income from my investments wasn't enough to make me rich, but it covered daily expenses for my son and me. I was now a senior executive at a startup, but the company's future didn't look good, and I should think about advancing my career. I thought about it all night. The next day, I told my parents a little about it. But as soon as they heard, they immediately decided, why get a job? Just inherit the family business. Me. No. No. The family business has elder brother. Elder brother. I have my own company. Me? What about second brother? I asked carefully. Second brother. I'm in scientific research. I don't touch that filthy money. Third brother? Third brother. Don't make me. I'd rather be cursed, looked down on, and spat on than work. Me. Fine. As long as you're happy. I was speechless. My dad looked at me with a smile. Nan, just take over peacefully. The whole family business will be yours from now on. My mum nodded repeatedly beside him. She looked like she would cry on the spot if I refused. I stared into 5 pairs of expectant eyes. My mouth twitched and I nodded in resignation. The atmosphere at home became much more upbeat after I agreed to take over the business. My dad immediately arranged a private tutor to drill me in business management. That tutor was my elder brother. After graduating, he refused my dad's offer to join the family business. He started his own company instead, and turned it into a commercial giant in just a few years. I felt truly honored to have such a big shot teaching me one-on-one. That since I promised to take over, I couldn't let my parents' hard-built business fail under me. So every day after sending my son to school, I buried myself in learning everything about running a company. After about a month of tutoring, my elder brother looked at me with admiration. You're really smart. You've basically got the hang of it. I touched my hair, a little embarrassed. Probably because I used to be a CEO assistant at Xu Zhuo, picked up some basics along the way. My elder brother raised an eyebrow. Suze? You weren't assistant to Xu Zhuo? I nodded obediently. My brother's expression turned to, that explains it. No wonder, Xu Zhuo is good. It makes sense you picked it up quickly working for him. I forced an awkward smile. I was afraid my brother would ask why I resigned next. Thankfully, he wasn't that gossipy. He thought for a moment and decided, I'll talk to Dad. Start hands-on training at the company tomorrow. I froze, feeling nervous. So soon? Can I study a few more days? My elder brother smiled and comforted me. Theory only goes so far. You have to do it yourself to learn. I was still hesitant. My brother stood up and patted my head. Don't be scared. Dad will still guide you at first. We'll take it slow. I relaxed only after hearing my dad wouldn't step down completely. I touched all the notes I'd taken these days. I secretly promised not to let my family down. The next day, after sending my son to school, I went to the company in my dad's car. We didn't hide my identity, but we didn't go out of our way to be high profile either. First, my dad took me to meet all the shareholders and executives. Then he showed me my office. He placed a stack of documents in front of me. This project is yours. Ask me if you don't understand anything. He smiled encouragingly. I nodded firmly. I spent the entire first day in my office dealing with contracts. After I settled in for a few days, my dad started taking me to various meetings and deliberately letting me speak. It wasn't smooth sailing at first. I was often challenged in meetings because I was parachuted in. But their challenges were childish compared to Xu Zhuo. Even back in university, I noticed Xu Zhuo was extremely serious and strict about everything, especially when I later became his assistant and handled his work. I was scolded by him many times at the beginning for small mistakes. These people spoke politely out of respect for my dad. Xu Zhuo had never held back, so I faced their work-related questions calmly and explained my views clearly. Over time, I could feel their attitudes softening. After my first practice project ended successfully, my dad confidently handed over daily operations to me. And the first big project after I officially took over was a collaboration with Xu Zhuo's company. Looking at the partner's name, I couldn't help sighing. What kind of fate was this? My elder brother also came on the day we met with Xu Zhuo's company. He said it was my first big project after taking over, and he was afraid Xu Zhuo would take advantage of my lack of experience. I knew Xu Zhuo wasn't that kind of person, but I thought it might be awkward meeting Xu Zhuo alone. So I didn't refuse. I sat in the meeting room with my team, feeling increasingly nervous. My elder brother chatted with me casually, unaware. I replied while glancing repeatedly at the door. When footsteps approached, my heart skipped a beat. My elder brother looked toward the door. That must be President Xu. Let's go greet them. Okay. I straightened my clothes and stood up. I linked my arm through my brother's and walked to the door, only to meet Xu Zhuo's eyes after all these years. Even though I was prepared, I froze for a moment. Years had passed, but Xu Zhuo looked almost the same, only calmer and colder. His gaze swept over me lightly. His pupils shrank slightly when our eyes met. I kept a polite smile, held out my hand and said, "Hello, President Xu. I look forward to our cooperation." Xu Zhuo stared at me obscurely for a long time before shaking my hand. He said calmly, "No need for formalities, President Lin." He pulled his hand back and led his team into the room. The arm linked with my brother relaxed a little. I breathed out quietly. My elder brother lowered his head and whispered in my ear, "Nervous about seeing your old boss?" He was more than just an old boss. He was also the father of your nephew. I followed my brother back into the meeting room, took a deep breath, and chaired the meeting calmly and confidently. The meeting went extremely smoothly. Everything was almost too perfect, except for Xu Zhuo's gaze, which seemed to bore straight through me the entire time. When the meeting ended, my brother stayed behind to help me wrap things up, casually chatting with the executives who had come along. Xu Zhuo, who should have left with his team, walked straight up to me instead. His eyes were dark as he looked at me. "Come here." I stood up from my seat almost out of reflex. My brother noticed my startled movement and looked at me questioningly. I cleared my throat, composed myself, and said calmly, "I need a word with President Xu." My brother looked from Xu Zhuo to me. He nodded meaningfully, as if he had figured something out. I had a feeling he was misunderstanding something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what. Besides, Xu Zhuo was staring at me intently beside me. I didn't overthink it. I turned to Xu Zhuo and smiled. "After you, President Xu." Xu Zhuo turned and walked away. I followed him to the stairwell of the fire escape. The floor above connected to the CEO's office, so almost no one came here. Once he made sure we were alone, I smiled and said, "What did you want to see me about, President Xu?" Xu Zhuo said nothing, studying me thoughtfully. I began to feel uneasy under his gaze and eventually looked away, unable to bear it any longer. His unemotional voice drifted over faintly. "Are you married?" I had imagined many topics he might bring up, but this was the last one I expected. I froze in surprise. "Pardon?" Xu Zhuo frowned slightly and repeated firmly, "Did you marry Lin Qin?" Me. Lin Qin was my older brother's name. What on earth was Xu Zhuo talking about? I denied it without hesitation. "Of course not." He looked utterly unconvinced, a hint of anger already flickering in his dark eyes. "Lin Nan, you don't have to lie to me. How else would you have become CEO of the Lin Group if you weren't married?" I opened my mouth, ready to explain, but the words died on my lips. I had no idea where to start. Should I begin with the time I was kidnapped as a child? In the moment I hesitated, Xu Zhuo seemed to confirm something from my reaction. The temperature around us plummeted noticeably. I heard him let out a cold laugh, his voice sarcastic. "No wonder you ran away so quickly back then. You slept with me one night and resigned the next day. You already had someone else lined up, didn't you?" "Me? Wait, that wasn't what happened at all. Lin Nan, you left your job as my CEO assistant without my permission and blocked all my contact details. You're really something." Xu Zhuo took a step closer, his gaze sharp and aggressive. I was momentarily overwhelmed by his presence, and I vaguely recalled the fear of being dominated by my boss when I was just his assistant. I stepped back instinctively, my back hitting the wall, and swallowed nervously. With a sharp thud, Xu Zhuo planted an arm against the wall beside my head. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, his eyes reddening faintly as he stared at me. I had never seen him like this. Along with my fear, I felt a strange flutter in my chest. The way we were positioned, it was like a cabadon. Oh no, he's so domineering. I love it. "Lin Nan, when did you marry Lin Qin? I never heard about it. Did you have a secret marriage?" "Me? Why was he so convinced I was married? Hadn't he noticed that my brother and I share the same surname? Come to think of it, you're both surnamed Lin, from the same clan. How convenient. Right, he had noticed. In a very sarcastic way. I finally snapped out of my daze under his relentless questioning. I pressed down on my wildly pounding heart and pushed him away from me. Xu Zhuo's expression darkened, his deep black eyes seeming to accuse me for pushing him. I didn't dare look him in the eye for too long, afraid I would lose control and say something I shouldn't. I looked away slightly and tried to sound calm. You've misunderstood. Lin Qin is my older brother. The air went quiet for a moment. Then Xu Zhuo repeated in an odd tone. Brother? I took a deep breath, suppressing my nerves, and turned to look at him seriously. It's a long story. To put it simply, I'm the long-lost daughter of the Lin family. I was recently reunited with them. Lin Qin is my biological brother. He came to support me because I just joined the company and don't have much experience yet. I explained everything briefly in one breath. As expected, Xu Zhuo looked utterly bewildered. I sighed and gave him time to process the information considerately. After all, I had been just as shocked when I first learned about my own background. I completely understood how he felt. After what felt like an eternity, Xu Zhuo suddenly let out a soft laugh. That single laugh held a complex mix of emotions. Shock, realization, and relief. My heart felt complicated. I stood silently beside him without speaking. Xu Zhuo looked at me. The anger in his eyes had completely vanished, replaced by a faint sense of grievance. If you weren't with someone else, why did you run away back then? I lowered my eyes, my thoughts swirling. Honestly, I never expected Xu Zhuo to still remember that night, let alone bring it up on his own initiative. After a drunken mistake between adults, years of no contact should have been the most dignified ending. At the thought, I sighed softly and blurted out. I thought you wanted to pretend nothing happened. You didn't contact me for 2 days. You didn't even look for me when I didn't come to work. I thought that was your decision. I didn't. He denied immediately, his voice sounding faintly anxious. I kept my head down and only heard him click his tongue in frustration. A few seconds later, his low, hoarse voice spoke slowly. When I woke up that day and found you gone, I thought I'd scared you the night before. I planned to let you calm down a little before explaining everything to you. But then I suddenly got news that my grandfather was critically ill. My grandfather passed away not long after. He left a huge inheritance, and I was busy dealing with all of that. Xu Zhuo paused, and I was slightly stunned by his words. An inheritance from a wealthy family's elder. It made sense now that he had been overwhelmed during that time. But Xu Zhuo didn't elaborate. He paused and brushed past the topic. Anyway, by the time I sorted everything out and wanted to find you, I discovered you'd blocked me. He looked at me, his eyes faintly resentful. I touched my nose and looked away guiltily. Later, I went to the company to talk to you properly, only to find out you'd resigned. I thought you'd run away because of me and never wanted to see me again. That's why I didn't look for you all these years. It seems we have quite a few misunderstandings between us. Xu Zhuo looked at me, his eyes full of sorrow. I stared back at him silently, unsure what to say. Xu Zhuo's words were completely unexpected from what he was saying. He hadn't just been acting impulsively after drinking that night. Then why? I lowered my eyes, afraid to examine the thought that was starting to take shape in my mind. Maybe he only wanted to talk about compensation. It might not be what I was hoping for. After all, we had known each other for so long, and I had never sensed he felt anything different for me. Xu Zhuo continued staring at me in silence. I leaned against the wall, not knowing how to break the tension either. A heavy silence settled between us. In the enclosed stairwell, awkwardness mixed with ambiguity made the air feel warmer. Lin Nan. Xu Zhuo suddenly spoke, his voice low and intimate as he called my name. I tensed my fingers instinctively. Just as I was about to crack under the atmosphere and run away, the fire escape door burst open. I jumped, standing up straight in reflex, my eyes fixed on the opened iron door. My older brother's figure slowly appeared in the doorway. I instantly felt as if I'd been caught red-handed and tensed up. What are you two doing here? My brother asked as he walked toward us, confused. I swallowed nervously and opened my mouth to explain, but no sound came out. Xu Zhuo, however, remained perfectly calm. President Lin and I haven't seen each other in a long time. We're just catching up. My brother stood in front of us, glanced at me, and said casually, "Is that so?" I nodded and stayed quiet. The more I spoke, the more mistakes I would make. My self-control was nowhere near Xu Zhuo's level. My brother studied Xu Zhuo and suddenly said, "Come to think of it, my sister used to work under you, right? I haven't thanked you yet for taking care of her." "No need for thanks, brother," Xu Zhuo said casually. I glanced at him, thinking his form of address sounded strange. I'm not just Lin Nan's former boss. I'm also her senior, so it's only right that I looked after her. Xu Zhuo smiled at my brother, but I felt there was something subtle about his words. Maybe a little too intimate? Sure enough, after hearing him, my brother frowned slightly, deep in thought. My mind raced as I tried to figure out how to smooth things over. Before I could come up with anything, my brother's face cleared. He clapped his hands and said, "Come to think of it, President Xu, are you still single? Why don't you give my sister a try?" "Emmy?" I stared at my brother in shock, unable to understand how he had jumped to that conclusion. My brother turned and winked at me. Then, under my horrified gaze, he enthusiastically promoted me to Xu Zhuo. "Who would have thought you and my sister had such a connection? You're single, she's unmarried. You'd be crazy not to get together. Oh, I heard you might have some hidden issues. Perfect. My sister already has a son. You'd be getting a great deal. Besides, our whole family has agreed. Everything we own will be hers someday. If you two get together, it'll be strength upon strength. A guaranteed win. President Xu, I really think you should consider it." My brother rambled on cheerfully, leaving me utterly dumbfounded. Wait. Since when were we obligated to be together? And what hidden issues? Did my son jump out of a rock? And since when was everything the family owned mine? I never knew they'd made that decision. There were too many absurd points to even process. I didn't know where to start refuting. Compared to my internal chaos, Xu Zhuo was only shocked by one thing. Lin Nan has a son? I froze, my eyes widening sharply. Right. Why did my brother just blurt that out? Help. I wanted to die of embarrassment. My brother's expression darkened slightly. Then he sighed sorrowfully. Yeah. Some bastard got her pregnant and left her to raise the child alone. Sigh. Poor little sister had to bring up the child by herself all these years. Who knows how much she suffered. If I ever find that bastard, I'll break his legs. Emmy? Xu Zhuo? Xu Zhuo slowly turned his head, his gaze towards me changing completely. I took a step to the side, ready to flee. Xu Zhuo grabbed me firmly. I couldn't break free. I heard Xu Zhuo say gently to my brother, "Brother, let me talk to Nan alone." He changed his form of address naturally. My brother seemed to understand his implication and left, looking satisfied. Me. Once my brother left the stairwell and closed the door considerately behind him, I laughed awkwardly. My brother can be a bit impulsive. Don't mind him. I shrank into the corner as I spoke. Xu Zhuo took a step forward without hesitation, closing the distance between us again. He looked at me, a faint smile playing on his lips. A son? It's a misunderstanding, really. I laughed awkwardly, waving my hand. Xu Zhuo was unmoved. He repeated in a strange tone. A bastard? I cleared my throat and looked away. Well, there was someone like that, but it wasn't you. Xu Zhuo frowned slightly. I was so guilty I didn't even know what I was rambling about. I met someone who lied to me later. That's when I had my son. I couldn't bring myself to abort him. It was just a surprise. God save me. I must be losing my mind. Xu Zhuo didn't say anything for a long time. My palms were sweating nervously, but I still refused to turn and look at him. I didn't know if Xu Zhuo believed my nonsense, but I really wasn't ready to tell him the truth yet. The stairwell was terrifyingly quiet. I could even hear my own heartbeat pounding violently. After what felt like an eternity, I heard Xu Zhuo laugh softly. He took a step back, and the sudden space made me sigh in relief. I finally plucked up the courage to lift my head and steal a glance at him. Xu Zhuo was looking at me with an amused smile. Me. On second thought, the floor was quite interesting. Your brother just said everything your family owns will be yours? He suddenly spoke, catching me off guard. Huh? I lifted my head instinctively, staring at him in confusion. Xu Zhuo stroked his chin thoughtfully. He narrowed his eyes, a calculating glint in them that made him look like a 1,000-year-old fox. Cunning and charming. The Lin group is huge. I wouldn't lose out if I married into your family. Me? Are you crazy? I shrieked, my eyes widening in shock. Xu Zhuo smiled faintly, looking utterly confident. Do your parents have any strict requirements for a son-in-law? What if I throw in the Xu group as well? Would that be enough? I couldn't take his absurd words anymore, and interrupted him. Wait. Xu Zhuo obediently fell silent, looking at me calmly. My mind felt like mush. Xu Zhuo, stop joking. The child really isn't yours. You don't have to do this. I sighed softly, my voice turning serious. I knew Xu Zhuo was a man with a strong sense of responsibility. If he found out the child was indeed his, he would probably stay with me out of duty. But that wasn't what I wanted. Xu Zhuo, that was a long time ago. We were both drunk that night. You really don't have to put so much pressure on yourself. I don't know what you wanted to say to me back then, but it must have been about compensation or something like that. I can tell you clearly now. I don't care about what happened. I've had a good life all these years. You really don't have to force yourself. I poured out everything on my mind in one breath. It was better to make things clear sooner rather than later. Xu Zhuo stayed silent for a long time, and I couldn't read his emotions at all. After a while, he spoke quietly. Lin Nan, do you know what you said when you were drunk that night? I froze, completely unable to recall what I might have said. Did I say something I shouldn't have? Xu Zhuo didn't seem to expect me to remember. He gave me only a second to think before continuing. That night, you held on to me and wouldn't let go. You told me you'd like me for a very long time. Me? What? What on earth did I say? You said you'd liked me since we were at university, and that you were so happy to be my assistant. You also said you never planned to confess to me. You were satisfied just staying by my side quietly. And you said, stop. I couldn't listen anymore. Just from those few words, I felt so embarrassed I wanted to die. But that was exactly how I felt back then. Damn it. That awful wine really was the worst. My cheeks burned unbearably. I felt like I was going to roast myself from the inside out. God, just kill me. I can't stay on this planet anymore. Lin Nan. Xu Zhuo called my name suddenly, his voice incredibly serious. There are things I said before that you don't remember, so I'll say them again now. I like you. I have for a very long time. I know after all these years, your feelings for me must not be the same as before. But that's okay. I can chase you again. Xu Zhuo suddenly smiled, looking surprisingly relaxed. I stared at him blankly. Anyway, I'm definitely marrying into your family. He said it with complete conviction. I was in a daze for the entire journey home. Xu Zhuo drove me back, and when we reached my door, he even pressed a light kiss on the back of my hand before saying goodbye. I drifted inside and found my whole family sitting neatly, all looking straight at me. I jumped, especially when I saw my eldest brother. I felt inexplicably guilty. Nanan's back. Come sit next to Mum, my mother called warmly. I swallowed nervously and sat beside her, feeling anxious. My mother stroked my hair with a smile. Your eldest brother told us everything. My heart tightened. I glanced at my brother instinctively. He grinned at me. That's Xu Zhuo, is he Tongtong's father? Me. I shot up from the sofa, exclaiming, how do you know? My eldest brother looked smug. I could tell the second I saw President Xu. He and Tongtong are like two peas in a pod. So I tested him. Me? I knew my brother had been acting crazy at the company for no reason. He'd been testing Xu Zhuo all along. My feelings were complicated. My mother stopped smiling and looked at me worriedly. So Nanan, can you tell us what really happened? She hesitated, glanced at my brother and said uncertainly, your brother says, he doesn't seem like the scumbag you mentioned. Me. I held my head silently and sighed deeply. After a moment's hesitation, I briefly told them the messy, dramatic story between Xu Zhuo and me. When I finished explaining everything from university to that very day, my whole family wore expressions of awkward disbelief. The living room fell into an eerie silence. I gave up and collapsed onto the sofa. The minute hand of the vintage clock ticked steadily. After what felt like ages, my father slowly spoke. So? That boy Xu Zhuo wants to marry into our family? I corrected weakly. He was just joking. My parents and brothers exchanged looks, all appearing thoughtful. My mother said slowly, "We need to test him first." My father, "Absolutely. He can't just marry Nan so easily. Not even if he is marrying in." Eldest brother, "I'll test him in the business world." Second brother, "I'll ask his postgraduate supervisor about his academic ability." Third brother, "I'll look into his personal life over the years. We don't want a man with a messy past." Me. I listened expressionlessly as they discussed how to assess Xu Zhuo one by one. The whole thing felt more and more surreal. In the end, they divided the work and drew up a thorough Xu Zhuo marriage assessment list. I weakly protested, but was ignored as expected. Watching my family already rushing around, I sighed and gave in. Fine, whatever. I didn't even understand my own feelings anymore. Did I still like Xu Zhuo? Blame him? Accept him? I had no idea. The insurmountable class difference between us was gone now. But when Xu Zhuo said he liked me and wanted to chase me, I still found it impossible to believe. And my son? I sighed, headache at the thought of explaining his sudden new father. Until I sorted out my emotions, I couldn't give Xu Zhuo a clear answer. Over the following days, Xu Zhuo did exactly as he said. He started chasing me. He picked my son and me up to school and worked every single day, rain or shine. When my son first saw him insisting on driving us, he was terrified Xu Zhuo was a kidnapper and burst into tears. I glanced at Xu Zhuo instinctively, but instead of being impatient, he knelt down and gently comforted him. It was strange. Blood really is an incredible thing. They were meeting for the first time, yet after just a few soft words from Xu Zhuo, my son slowly stopped crying. I watched as Xu Zhuo won my son over completely within an hour. By the time he dropped my son at kindergarten, the boy was clinging to his neck, reluctant to let go. I pulled him off Xu Zhuo ruthlessly, handed him to the teacher with a straight face, and dragged Xu Zhuo away without looking back. "Ooh, little traitor. Go to school." After dropping my son off, Xu Zhuo drove me to the company. Before we said goodbye, he smiled brightly. "I'll come find you for lunch." He didn't wait for my reply. The car disappeared from sight in an instant. Me. Xu Zhuo slowly wormed his way into my life for 2 months, until I finally got used to him being around every day. But deep down, I still had an indescribable fear. I found it completely unreal that Xu Zhuo could like me. Because of this insecure uncertainty, I hesitated and never gave him a clear answer. Even I thought I was acting like a heartless woman. Yet Xu Zhuo remained calm and gentle, quietly weaving himself into my life. On the 60th day since we reunited, our first collaborative project finally ended successfully. The result was even better than I'd expected. Without hesitation, both sides signed a long-term contract for the project. To celebrate, I treated colleagues from both teams to dinner that night. I was in a good mood and accidentally drank a few too many glasses of sake. Just as I was about to take a third, Xu Zhuo suddenly held my hand. He gently turned his wrist and took the cup away without drawing attention. Under my confused gaze, he leaned close to my ear and whispered softly, "Don't drink anymore. You'll feel unwell later." I instinctively touched my neck, where his warm breath had brushed. For no reason, I thought back to that blurry, absurd night years ago. My face burned fiercely, whether from alcohol or embarrassment. I suddenly felt shy. I nodded lightly and looked away, not daring to meet his eyes. Xu Zhuo chuckled softly. He drank straight from the cup I'd just used. His thin, rosy lips glistened with alcohol. I stared at his lips and felt inexplicably dry-mouthed. The second Xu Zhuo's gaze threatened to turn toward me, I looked away in a fluster. I picked up a teacup and took a small sip. In the clear reflection, my face was bright red, as if it might explode. After dinner, Xu Zhuo drove me home. Sitting in the passenger seat, I closed my eyes and pretended to rest, using the slight drunkenness as an excuse. The car was a little warm. Xu Zhuo refused to open the windows, worried I'd catch a cold after drinking. A faint, ambiguous atmosphere mixed with the faint scent of alcohol hung in the air. Quiet, but hazy. For the first time that journey, I seriously thought about my relationship with Xu Zhuo. But what exactly was I trying to figure out? My mind felt messy, and I blamed it naturally on the alcohol. Xu Zhuo drove quietly the whole way. He'd been like this lately, no matter how I acted. He indulged and spoiled me. When the car reached my estate, Xu Zhuo gently shook me awake. "We're here. Go home and sleep." I pretended to blearily open my eyes and glanced out the window instinctively. That one glance instantly sobered me up. I sat up sharply, staring in disbelief at 3 people standing by the gate, looking around. My former foster parents, and the son they'd adopted later. In an instant, memories of being abused and humiliated flooded back violently. My body trembled instinctively. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was pure muscle memory. A hand suddenly took mine. I turned sharply and met Xu Zhuo's shocked gaze. "You?" He frowned slightly, his eyes full of concern. I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down, pulling my hand away. "I'm fine." My voice turned cold without me realizing. Xu Zhuo clearly didn't believe me. He looked at me deeply. After a moment, he seemed to realize something and slowly turned his gaze to the window. He stiffened slightly when he saw the 3 people outside. Then I heard him murmur quietly, "What are they doing here?" I froze and stared at him, eyes wide. "You know them?" Xu Zhuo looked back at me, his expression complicated. He seemed to be hesitating how to explain. After a long pause, he said slowly, "They're your former foster parents, right?" I sat up straight, staring at him in complete disbelief. I opened my mouth and exclaimed, "How do you know?" Xu Zhuo sighed. He didn't answer immediately, but looked outside thoughtfully. "Are they here to find you?" I pushed down my confusion and said quietly, "Probably." After all, in this area, they didn't know anyone but me. Xu Zhuo nodded. He unfastened his seatbelt and turned to get out. "Wait!" I called instinctively, my voice anxious. Xu Zhuo's hand was already on the door handle. He turned and looked at me gently. "Don't be afraid," he said softly. "Stay in the car. I'll go sort this out for you." I opened my mouth to stop him, to tell him I could handle it myself. But facing Xu Zhuo's gentle, determined gaze, I couldn't force the words out. I silently pulled back my halfway outstretched hand and murmured, "Be careful. Call security if you need to. Don't fight with them." Xu Zhuo chuckled and stepped neatly out of the car. The car windows were one way. From inside, I could clearly see his tall, straight figure walk toward my foster parents. I watched him speak to them. My foster parents and their son eyed him cautiously at first. Then, after Xu Zhuo said something, their expressions changed drastically. The warm smile he usually wore around me was gone. This was the Xu Zhuo I remembered, the strict senior, the cold CEO. Distant, firm, and overwhelmingly imposing. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but watching his back, my heart strangely calmed down. Actually, when I'd been his assistant before, I'd been scolded plenty in private. But in public, he'd never let anyone bully me once. Xu Zhuo seemed cold and unapproachable, but once you got to know him, you could see he was fiercely protective. He was like a tall, strong tree, powerful enough to give the people around him complete security. I watched him take out his phone and say something sharply to my foster parents. Their expressions changed again. They grew visibly nervous. Compared to their tension, Xu Zhuo remained calm and composed. He said one final thing, then turned neatly and returned to the car. I saw my foster family freeze. And before long, they left in defeat. As soon as Xu Zhuo got back in the car, I asked immediately, "What did you talk about?" Xu Zhuo picked up a bottle of water and took a sip, acting casual. "Their son is getting married. They came to ask you for money." I froze, then laughed bitterly at how absurd it was. Once, they hadn't even wanted me to go to school. If kind people hadn't helped me, I would have had to work instead of finishing high school. And now, after all these years, they expected me to pay for their adopted son's wedding. How dare they? I snorted, my voice cold. "In your dreams." Xu Zhuo smiled and looked at me, no anger in his eyes. I told them it was impossible. I fell silent. After hesitating for a moment, I finally whispered, "When did you know I grew up in an orphanage?" I was certain I never mentioned my family background in university. Only my tutor knew the truth about me. After I started working, no one asked about my personal situation. "How did Xu Zhuo? You?" he began. his voice full of hesitation. His attitude only confused me more. What else wasn't Xu Zhuo telling me? Never mind. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Did you ever receive anonymous financial support when you were younger? I froze and nodded instinctively. Then I suddenly understood what he meant. I stared at him, eyes wide in disbelief. It was you. Xu Zhuo nodded and explained. Technically, it was my mother. She supported you privately. That's why it wasn't reported in the news. I was stunned by the revelation. My mind went blank. She's Buddhist. She does charity every year, and she strongly believes good deeds should be done anonymously. It's normal you never knew who helped you. I rubbed my temples helplessly. After a long while, I finally managed to ask. So you've known all along? No, Xu Zhuo denied. I found out by accident during my postgraduate studies. Professor Wang let it slip. I looked at him with mixed feelings. Xu Zhuo touched his nose and sighed softly. Nan, you won't accept me because you don't trust me, do you? He spoke seriously, and although it sounded like a question, his tone was certain. He was right. I looked at him without speaking. I really have liked you since university, and I first noticed you because you were the person my family was supporting. Next, I heard Xu Zhuo briefly explain what I'd never understood. Why he'd liked me. After I found out about your background from Professor Wang, I looked into your records. At first, I was just curious about the person my mum was supporting. But the more I learned, the more I realized how incredibly excellent you are. Before you confessed to me that night when you were drunk, I truly had no idea you liked me back. You paused and glanced up at me. I laughed awkwardly. I wasn't surprised at all. Back then, I'd been so aware of the gap between us that I'd kept strict boundaries. Besides, I'd left the care home and still owed money for my studies. Romance was the last thing on my mind. Studying hard and earning money mattered far more. Most of my interactions with Xu Zhuo at university had been asking him for help with experiments. Our tutor was busy, and Xu Zhuo was brilliant, so we were often assigned to him. I knew plenty of girls used questions as an excuse to flirt with him, but I'd had no such intentions and never imagined he'd notice me. Anyway, I realized I liked you at university, but you always seemed uninterested, so I didn't dare take it further. I sighed. I couldn't believe we'd secretly loved each other for years, all because of misunderstandings. Later, I went home to take over the company. When you applied to be my assistant, I was overjoyed. I couldn't help interrupting. You were overjoyed? I thought you hated me back then. Xu Zhuo defended himself, sounding wronged. I was just shy. Otherwise, how could you have become my chief assistant with your experience at the time? Me? Fine, if you say so. Anyway, I planned to take things slowly and let us grow closer at work. But then you got drunk, confessed to me, and seduced me. I got used and thrown away without a second thought, and ignored for years. By the end, he sounded close to tears. Me. Help. I was starting to feel guilty. That's only because you never confessed. How could I tell you I liked you, with the difference between us back then? I touched my nose, ready to turn the blame around. Besides, it was the truth. Xu Zhuo sighed. He didn't argue. Instead, he said, "You're right. It's my fault. I never considered how you felt. I just thought there was plenty of time. From my own perspective." He spoke softly, his voice gentle and undeniably sincere. I froze. I didn't mean that. No. Xu Zhuo placed a single finger gently on my lips, interrupting me softly. I'm not just comforting you. I really mean it. I was first attracted to you because of how excellent you are. Your background wasn't easy, but you lived more positively than anyone else. You had your own goals, your own dreams. You never felt sorry for yourself because of your identity. You just kept moving forward firmly. Compared to you, my life was too easy. That made me overlook what really mattered to you back then. I never wanted to mention that my family supported you, because I didn't want it to feel like I was holding it over you. I didn't give you the courage to come to me before. So this time, I'll come to you. Nan, I love you. Holy hell, that was good. How did I know he'd be this smooth? Shush, keep your voice down. You'll scare Nan. Hey, don't push me. Let me hear how she replies. Me? I turned around in shock and realized the car window behind us had been rolled down a crack by Xu Zhuo at some point. Brilliant. I'd been so caught up in Xu Zhuo's confession that I hadn't noticed the cold stares from behind. Outside the window, my entire family, including my precious son, were all smiling at me neatly in a row. Me. Honestly, it was a little terrifying. For a moment, I forgot how deeply his confession had affected me. I got out of the car and stared at them in shock. What are you all doing out here? My father's eyes glistened. Xu Zhuo told us your foster parents were bothering you, so we came out to meet you. We had no idea you went through so much, Nan. Why didn't you tell us? My mother already pulled me into a hug, crying quietly. You've suffered so much, baby. Don't worry. We won't let that family get away with this. My eldest brother held my son and cleared his throat. We didn't mean to eavesdrop. You were just too focused. We didn't want to interrupt. My second brother nodded wildly. Yeah. It wasn't on purpose. My third brother stroked his chin. That President Xu is really good. Should we let him marry in after all, Dad? My father, definitely. I'll call Sujin tomorrow to see what they think. Me. Sujin was Xu Zhuo's real father. I stared at them speechlessly and took my son from my eldest brother's arms. My son leaned on my shoulder and suddenly shouted happily behind me. Daddy. Uncle Xu, you're my daddy, right? Me. I turned around and saw Xu Zhuo had gotten out of the car at some point and was standing right beside me. He smiled and stroked my son's head, his eyes soft. Ask, Mummy. Am I your daddy? My son looked at me, his eyes clear. Me. I hesitated, unsure how to answer. Then my son broke into a bright smile. Mummy doesn't need to say. I already knew Uncle Xu is my real daddy. Me. How do you know? I blurted out. My son grinned. We look exactly the same. Mummy's silly, you can't tell. Me. I instinctively compared my son's face to Xu Zhuo's. Oh. I stuffed my son back into Xu Zhuo's arms and covered my face in embarrassment. Unbelievable. How could a father and son look this identical? Xu Zhuo held my son and laughed softly. He stepped forward to stand beside me, then looked at my family, gentle and determined. Uncle, auntie, and 3 brothers. You heard my heart just now. I really love Nan, and I know I've made mistakes all these years. I'm willing to give all my shares in the Xu group to Nan for free. I hope you can trust me to take good care of her. I stared at Xu Zhuo in disbelief. He wasn't joking at all. My parents and brothers were already grinning from ear to ear. They politely said, no need, while already discussing plans for the parents to meet. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my son back from Xu Zhuo, pushed him into my eldest brother's arms, and dragged Xu Zhuo away. We'll talk later. I need to sort things out with him first. I called quickly to my parents, then pulled Xu Zhuo away without looking back. Xu Zhuo smiled the entire time, letting me pull him, not resisting at all. I dragged him to a quiet corner, gritted my teeth, then grabbed his collar and snarled, You did that on purpose. He chased my foster parents away, then texted my family to come get me. And the whole family, even my 4-year-old son. And that car window I'd been facing away. But Xu Zhuo had seen everything. He definitely rolled the window down on purpose. He'd planned it all along. I ground my teeth, wanting to hit him. Xu Zhuo smiled and let me pull him, looking completely relaxed, as if letting me do anything I wanted. He chuckled low in his throat, his eyes full of joyful love. Yes, I did it on purpose. I wanted your family to know how I feel. After all, I'm marrying into the family. I can't do it without their approval. Xu Zhuo spoke between laughs. His low voice made me feel even more embarrassed and frustrated. I punched him lightly. Xu Zhuo only laughed harder. I held his collar and gritted my teeth, then finally sighed and let go. I shot him a coquettish glance and said calmly, You don't have to blame yourself for everything. Xu Zhuo didn't speak. He just looked at me gently, smiling. I fell quiet for a moment, then finally exhaled in defeat. I turned to face him directly, looking straight into his eyes, completely serious. Secret crushes, bad wine, years apart. We were both at fault for everything that happened. There were real, uncrossable gaps between us before. That's a fact. I don't need you to take all the blame. And I don't want to argue whether my choices back then were right or wrong. Xu Zhuo, after going around and around, we're still together. I want to be brave for myself. I suddenly pulled him closer by his tie. Then, in his slightly widened eyes, I kissed him without hesitation. From campus to office, from being alone to having everything to lose. Xu Zhuo and I missed so many years, yet this felt like the perfect time for us to find each other. After all this time, he'd finally chased away my deepest fears. From now on, I would be with him openly. I pressed gently against his soft lips, clearly feeling his slightly unsteady breath. I smiled softly and whispered, "Xu Zhuo, I like you too. The moment you fell in love with me, I was already loving you."